today. What's important for this afternoon is I'm a recovering sports parent. And what I really want to do is keep this informal and introduce you to my colleague and my friend here. This is Bobby Howe. And I could tell you that he played professionally for West Ham and Bournemouth in the EPL. And I could tell you that he used to be the director of coaching for U.S. Soccer. And I could tell you that he used to be the director of coaching for Washington Youth Soccer. I can even confess that he both played and coached the Seattle Sounders as well as the Portland Timbers, but that's not relevant to this afternoon. What's relevant is 12 years ago, Bobby and I met in a meeting full of unhappy parents with a coach. He was the coach. I was a parent. I might have been the only happy parent in that room. So we met in the roles of coach and parent. And the other thing is, I mean, we've been working together ever since on a whole variety of projects, and we're still talking to each other. We are both grandparents. And so in addition to all of those strange and wonderful things we've done, we're now seeing the game through a different lens now as grandparents. So what we want to do today is talk about basically three things. Setting expectations with your parents at the front end. Bobby's really good at that. He's got some resources for you. Talking about ongoing communications as the season goes on to sort of keep the team together. There will be stories told. And then I'm going to wrap it up with some tips from sort of the mediator side of, okay, when you have to have a conversation that isn't going to be as delightful as you want it to be, what are some things that you can make those conversations easier to help you out? And then questions, and I have a handout. I had a handout this morning, I have a handout this afternoon, and it's some stuff that Bobby has written about parents. I'm working with them. So, help us set the expectations.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everybody. As Ruth said, I'm Bobby Howe. I was born just after World War II. Actually, the war ended in March, and I was born in December, so you could say that I was probably a result of the victory celebration. My dad was in the war and was invalided out, but was a really good soccer player. Going into the war, played a little bit when he came out, but really wasn't the same. I was very fortunate in that while I was growing up, sort of from the age of 5, after the war, I was able to play with my friends on the field. There was no coaching. We played all day long, and the game started when the person that owned the ball came out to play. And finished when his mum called him in for his tea in the afternoon. That was the end of the game. But we played games that were improvised. We made them up. The world was our oyster, and we didn't have parents interfering with our fun. So that's really formed that, in the back of my mind, has really formed the basis of what is now termed a philosophy of playing the game. But my dad, loved the game. He took me to see a few games, but he never ever rammed the game down my throat. Occasionally he would, get out the salt and pepper pots on the table and sort of move things around, after seeing me play a few times. But he never forced it. He didn't come out there and demand that I do things this way or that way or the other way. And here my mum supported my play through youth soccer, which was basically school soccer in those days. There weren't the youth clubs as there are now. It was mainly done through the English Schools Football Association, and your development was through that. Anyway, he used to come out and watch me play. My mum watched me play, but the behaviour on the sidelines was very civilised. So I've been a son in that situation, and I have children who both played soccer at one level or another, and I found that I didn't force anything down their throats either. I just supported them and encouraged them to do what they wanted to do. my daughter one day on the way home from a game made a very grave mistake. She asked me what I thought about her in the game, and that took about 20 minutes at least to explain the intricacies of the position in which she was playing, and I never got asked the question again. So quite rightly. So as a son, as a dad, and now as a granddad, my grandsons play the sport. They love to play, and I do the same with them. I don't ram the game down their throat. I let them play, and I'm very pleased about that. Because, they don't need to hear it from 9 or 10 different people as to the way their behaviour should be. So the common denominator really has been that we've been supporters of the team. Our job has been to cheer and to encourage. It's understandable that at games that parents are not impartial. If you have kids that play, you are not impartial at the game. Same is true from a coach. A coach can't be impartial either. The only impartial people at the games are the officials. And in some cases, the way they officiate, you wonder if that's true too, So anyway, so my thoughts, from a very, very early age as to when I played, through my playing career, through my coaching career, it really hasn't changed at all. And I always say that I feel that coaches really have no excuse for bad behaviour on the field, and coaches really should set the example for everybody else. So for today, really, we wanted to set out a few parameters in dealing with parents. And the first thing I think that's very, very important for all coaches and clubs is to hold team formation meetings with the parents so that they can lay out their philosophy, the commitment to the team, the schedule for the upcoming year, and parental responsibilities, i.e. the jobs that they're given to do throughout the year. Those are their responsibilities. And I've always said at those team formation meetings that there are really 4 reasons to be at the field. You're either a player, a coach, a referee, or a parent. And I asked the parents just to pick one of those. So you're only there for one reason. So I think that's very important. 2, I think that it's important to send out emails. What I have done throughout the last several years is to send out email. I don't bombard parents with emails by any manner of means, but I've sent emails out to them to let them know how I think the team is doing, where I think the players need to improve, what I'm seeing in the players, and so on and so forth. But I also have to send out, or I have sent out emails, because it's very clear to me that some of the parents on the opposite touchline have been given choice pieces of information to their players on the field. So, I've sent out emails not to pick out any individual parents, but I've sent it out, if the cat fits mentality. So in other words, and that actually has worked for me, because I've had parents come up to me after those emails and said, I think that could have been me. Well, I've had 3 or 4 of them do that at the same time. It could be me. I'll go, okay, and then it's done, right? Don't let it happen again. So I think the other thing that's important for parents to understand, that if they are coaching from the sidelines, they may be giving bits of information to the players that are completely contradictory to the information that's been given from the other touchline. And all that creates stress for the players on the field. I mean, if you think about it, the players have to run and sweat and make split-second decisions under the pressures of time and space on the field. Now, we don't want conflicting information from the other side because that creates more stress. So I try to point that out, and by and large, that's gone down very well. The third area is post-game talks. Post-game talks. Talking to the players after the game. But in most cases, I try to talk to the players in front of their parents after the games, because I'm actually talking to the parents, about what I believe has been going on. And all that does away with this, the ride home in the car. And some of you may have experienced some of that, where you go to the player. What did the coach say after the game? The coach is talking for 5 minutes after the game, and the parent says, "So what did the coach say?" And they go, "Oh, nothing." So 5 minutes of nothing was said after the game. Whereas if the talking is done to the parents, to the players and the parent immediately after the game, then the parents know exactly what was said because they've received the information. So I think that's very, very, very important. What's also important with the emails is to let the parents know what is improved, what the players need to do individually, and I think that's really very important. So the next criteria is individual player evaluations. At our club, it's mandatory for coaches twice a year after each of the respective seasons to provide an evaluation for each of the players, just to let them know how you think that they're progressing at the end of the season. And that has always been a very, very good method of communication to the players. There was once this year where I had done it once, and the club wanted one very soon thereafter. So I asked the players to look at the evaluations that I'd sent and send their opinions of their own performance to me. So I made them do the work, but it had a pretty similar effect. I thought it was good for them to not only just look at a piece of paper, make an aeroplane out of it and throw it, rather than to look at it themselves and try to analyse their own performance. And I thought that was a good thing to do. So finally, I think it's important for all to note that soccer is a player's game. It's a game for the players. It's not a game for the parents or all the peripheral positions. I believe there's a schematic on one of the handouts.
That's right, in the handout.
Okay, so in the middle of that is the player. So really, the player is the centre of our universe. And that doesn't mean to say that, the mum and dad should go and look for the ball after training, after the kids kicked it against the fence or picked up their bags for them and all that sort of thing. I don't mean that. But the player is the centre of all our attention, and everything that we do is around the player to help that player to be able to perform to his or her maximum ability without outside worries, hopefully. So it's a game, soccer is a game of skill, imagination, creativity, and decision making. So, as coaches, it's very important to note that. It's a game, and all games should be like this, which all players must have an equal opportunity to participate, but understanding that some players will be better or more effective than others. Some players are better, some people are better mathematicians, some people are better musicians, and so on. Soccer's no different. Some people actually are better than others, and that's very, very important to understand. And sometimes when you're managing players, that becomes very difficult. I just wrote this down because this happened to me at the weekend. Managing a squad for a game with 16 to 18 players is not an easy exercise. Trying to squeeze 18 players into a game that lasts 40 minutes is not easy. 16 or 18 into 11 doesn't go. So somebody has to be disappointed. So, and I wrote this down. I think that, if coaches are working with groups of players, if it can work out where you have a squad of 16, that's about the best number to have, because on the field for training purposes it all works out, and so on and so forth. And for games, 5 players on the bench is better than 7 players, and trying to squeeze them all in and give everybody the appropriate amount of playing time. So naturally, as the more effective the players are, the more playing time they'll get. And if a player goes onto the field, he or she should make the maximum opportunity of that. What I have done for the last 10 years or so in coaching teams has to be giving players at least one period of 15 to 20 consecutive minutes in a game. One period. Not split it up like in 5-minute periods where it looks as if a person's having a lot of playing time, but all he or she is doing is running on and off the field and getting pulled off after making a mistake, and so on and so forth. That's not helpful to the player. In my opinion, it's very, very important in games for a player to go onto the field and know that, even if they make a mistake, they're going to stay on, and it gives them the opportunity to feel the pace of the game. They're on there long enough to feel the game and to be able to contribute. And I always feel that that's very, very important. So those are some of the things that some of the advice that I would give to coaches or to clubs and so on. I just found this the other day. It's the latest handbook that we have for our club. So at the team formation meetings, every parent gets one of these books that gives, from philosophy, from mission statement to philosophy to fees, and you sort of sneak the fees in there somewhere, so which is very, very important. Tells you who the board of directors are, what their jobs are, etc., etc. So really good information. And in some of the stuff that that I have done over the years, I've often finished with this particular piece, and it's all about success and excellence. And the reason I like to do it because it very succinctly sums up what I feel about sports at this time. And it's called Success and Excellence, it says. There are many people, particularly in sports, who think that success and excellence are the same thing. And they're not the same thing. Excellence is something that is lasting and dependable and largely within a person's control. In contrast, success is perishable and is often outside our control. If you strive for excellence, you probably will be successful eventually. People who put excellence in first place have the patience to end up with success. An additional burden for the victim of the success mentality is that he or she is threatened by the success of others and resents real excellence. In contrast, the person fascinated by quality is excited when he or she sees it in others. So I think that's really, really important. It creates, from my point of view, a really, really nice perspective about sport and why we play sport and how to play the sport, etc., etc. So that's it. Oh, no, that's okay.
When Bobby was talking about the time on the field, the 15-minute playing time for his kids, that was one of the topics in the meeting where we met. My son had just joined the team, so we didn't know the old coach. Bobby was the director of coaching, and we had a new coach, new to us, new to the rest of them. And I vividly remember talking about the new substitution policies. He wanted that the kids got a chunk of time to play. And the other thing was something about our defensive formations. And it was a challenging meeting because most of the parents didn't like the changes, and most of the parents didn't understand the changes. And I was really happy with my son's experience, but the rest of the room, not so much. It was a tough meeting.
I'm angry.
So what I want to do is give you some tips of the trade about when something has gone sideways and you have to have, a difficult conversation, because not all of them are, sunshine and roses. One of the things I work with clubs about is escalating issues. When something goes sideways over the weekend and you're not happy and you want somebody to pay attention and fix it. And there are really 3 levels of escalation in a club. And I want you to think about, you've got the team level, you've got the staff level at the club, maybe a director of coaching, maybe an executive director kind of level, and then you have the board of directors. And some of you were in the session we talked about boards of directors this morning. There's some principles about escalating things. And it's all about, when you're mad, do not pick up the phone and call the president first off. Not going to help you. So you want to solve whatever issue it is at the lowest level possible. You want to make sure you've got a no surprises policy with your coach. Even if you're having a disagreement, do not blindside, do not surprise your coach. Make sure your coach knows why you're unhappy, and if you feel the need to go over the coach's head, that the coach knows that's what you're doing. And it doesn't get blindsided by the president or the director of coaching or whoever else he or she reports to. And the third one is let the staff at the club, whether it's a director of coaching, a board member, a senior staff, let them deal with the leagues and the associations that your team plays in. As a parent, don't go run into the head of the league to complain about whatever that issue is that's really bugging you. Let the folks who normally do that. And the reason is it can backfire on your club and on a whole lot more teams than just your team. Because like it or not, leagues and associations make opinions about clubs. And if they have a bad experience with you as a parent, unfortunately, they may in fact hold that against the other teams in your club, and those teams and kids don't deserve that. So think about, at the lowest level possible, I can remember an issue, well, it was before we joined Bobby's Club. It actually was the thing that led to us doing that. My son was playing for a different club. Something really bad happened over the weekend, and the car ride home was miserable because we were all very, very angry. And I put the entire family in timeout for 2 days because it would not have been smart for us to speak up when we were that angry. My kids hate having a mediator for a mom. We ended up leaving the team anyway. But if it's not a matter of health and safety, 911 for real, if you can persuade people to sit on it for 24 hours or even 48 hours before raising it, you're liable to not be quite as hot-headed about whatever it was that bugged you. Doesn't mean you shouldn't bring it up. Just don't bring it up when you are full of 4-letter words. One of the keys to a good conversation when you know you got to talk about something that's not terribly comfortable is separating interest from positions. And you think, okay, well that sounds kind of like the same thing. For years, I taught conflict resolution at the elementary school across the street from where we live. This elementary school has tables in the back of every classroom called the peace table, and they start teaching kids at 3rd grade how to solve conflict. So by the time they're in 5th grade, which is how many grades are in that school, if one of the students has a conflict, they get a choice. They can have a parent, a teacher, or a staff person help them, or they can get a 5th grader to come help mediate and solve whatever that conflict is. And so we started in 3rd grade teaching the kids about conflict and how to solve it. And the way I teach it to 3rd graders is the easiest way I know to remember. So I show up in class and I have one orange, and I get 2 little kids to help me. I say, hey, I've got an orange, who wants the orange? And the 2 little kids, because they're in on it, they both want the orange. And so I turn to the class and I say, I got 1 orange, I got 2 people that want the orange, what should I do? And what do you think they tell me? Cut it in half, that's exactly what they do. And right on cue, because these 2 little kids are in on it, neither one of them likes that solution. It doesn't work for them. They're now more unhappy So I turn back to the class and say, okay, I gotta go to a different solution. What do you think I should do? And they squirm because, well, cutting it in half was like so obvious. And finally somebody will say, why do they want the orange? It's a magical question. Why? So, okay. Why do you want the orange? I'm hungry. I want the whole orange because I'm really hungry. Well, that makes sense. Turn the other kid. It's my dad's birthday. I'm making him his favorite cake. I want the zest of the orange to help make his cake. And the point is, asking the word why separates the position. The position is, I want the orange. The interest is, I'm hungry or I'm baking. And once you uncover the interest, a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, there's an aha moment of, I can give you an even better solution than the one that seemed really obvious 10 minutes ago. That why, that what is behind the position is the magic. And so if you don't know how to get there, there are a couple ways to get there. The easiest way is to pretend that you're my 4-year-old grandson. His favorite question is why. And every time you ask somebody why, or a variation of that, they have to go a little deeper. So imagine I'm trying to tell Logan to eat his vegetables. Why? Well, I cooked them, they're part of dinner. Why? Well, because we're trying to have a balanced meal with, meat and potatoes and vegetables. And why? And now I'm into, vegetables are good for your health, right? And so I have gone from eat your vegetables, Logan, to I want you to be healthy because I love you. And then at the last why, it's like, well, okay, maybe if he doesn't like green beans, maybe he'll eat Brussels sprouts. So the point of, how do I get vegetables in my kid becomes a broader question, but it's not the position of just eat your vegetables. There's more to it than that. So the technique is called the 5 whys. And usually if you get into it about somewhere between 3 and 5 whys, really, you start finding out what's really behind this position. What's really important to the person that they're taking this. And it helps you understand. So imagine that somebody comes to Bobby and he says, I want more playing time, coach. Oh boy, we hate that playing time conversation, don't we? Well, one, you hope it's not the parent. One, you hope it's the player going to the coach and saying, hey coach, I want to play more. If Bobby can figure out why that player wants more playing time, he's got more options to help the player. Is it to show off for a college coach? Is it to become the best goalkeeper in the club? Is it just to be big man on campus? There are other training opportunities he knows about that can help that player meet whatever those goals are. But if it's just, I want more playing time, there's an assumption about what does playing time get you, right? The other thing, when you've got to have the conversation and you've got to get to a resolution, I have a colleague in Boston, his entire facilitation practice is based on improvisational theater. He's the most delightful person to work with. And there's a series that they use in the improv theater that's what, so what, and now what. Get you through any conversation. What is all about what happened, the observable, the facts, the situation. It doesn't have judgment on it, it just happened. We lost, I'm a goalkeeper, I got scored on, what happened, right? So what is about meaning and how it affects you. So what are the ramifications of whatever it is that happened? It can be my reaction, my feelings, my emotions. It also could be something else. It could be a business decision that took you down a different path. So what does it mean? And now what is, well, what are we going to do about it? That's the solution part. What's the next step? What's the decision? But by chunking it up into what, so what, now what, You're separating what we know, what we can agree on what happened, how it affects each of us. Because it could affect us differently. Maybe I don't care. And maybe it means a whole lot to you. And in that part of the conversation, I have the realization that this harmed you, or it frustrated you, or it made you angry. And then now what is, okay, how do we resolve it? How do we move forward? It's a really easy way to sort of back up, because if you don't understand the what, it's hard to spring forward to, well, what are we going to do about it? So those are my back of the napkin mediator tricks for surviving conversations that, you know, you're not terribly looking forward to, but you're going to have, they're going to happen. Have final comments before we ask them what else they want to know?
So now what?
Now what? Now it's their turn.
You guys find, setting expectations, start of the season, you have your parents meeting. I see a lot of organizations turn into codes of conduct, having for both coaches, athletes, and parents. Do you guys find those effective, or is it more just formality? Is it really something that people follow once they see that? Now that they put their name on something, they feel maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a great question. With respect to codes of conduct, et cetera, it's mandatory. We have a coaching badge on these, and supposed to have them at the field for each game. And in order to attain that card, there are certain things one has to do now, which are to do with, some of it's to do with injuries, notwithstanding that most of us are not doctors, but, common sense,
Sure.
Common sense with respect to behavior, et cetera, et cetera. And there are separate tests that are put on now by the your governing body, governing body for your club at that particular time. So we have to do that once every couple of years. And then within our own club, we have some documents on behavior, and there's information in there on concussions and how to deal with it, and so on and so forth. Always erring on the side of caution, but we have to go through these things. So I think it's important. In many ways, it's the jurisdiction covering the backsides, but they have to do it these days.
Right.
And it's a good thing for us to know.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of organizations when they go through the registration process. Part of that is kind of sign off. So parent, I agree to.
Right.
Yeah.
B, C, and D.
I rebuilt 9 registration processes for a club last winter. They had so many programs, we rebuilt them all. And we built in those releases. There was the
Right,
medical
waiver.
release and the code of conduct for the parents and the code of conduct
Yeah.
for the player. And it just sort of went on and on and on. And so in some ways, they actively had to say, yes, I read this. I think the rub is less about, yeah, that makes sense, and you read it and you're like, are you going to really argue with that code of conduct? But it comes back to the enforcement of it.
Yeah.
So if you're on a board of directors or you're a senior staff person, and I as a parent wig out and do something ill-advised, does the club have the backbone to call me up and say, Ruth, you do that again and we're going to invite you to leave? Are they going to talk to me? Are they going to sanction me? Are they going to hold me accountable? This part of the country is incredibly conflict averse as compared to other parts of the U.S. and even other parts of the world. And so I think the rub is often more, are we going to stand behind what we say we believe? And are we going to hold Ruth accountable if, she swears at the referee?
Right, so it's only as good as, like say the back of the board and the follow through.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And that part's actually much harder, because some of our leagues and some of our governing bodies have that kind of authority, and others not so much. So the buck then stops at your local board of directors or your local club owners. And when in the pay-to-play model that we have for so many sports, now you've put in front of them bad behavior versus revenue. And that is so not the question.
Willing to tolerate it.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to sound that mercenary, but in fact, there are clubs who look at that and say, we're willing to tolerate a certain level of misbehavior because of the financial hit. That's a tough sentence.
Yeah, that's very, very tough. And similarly, money is a huge factor in the running of clubs at this time, as you know. And sometimes, you know, the decisions we make fly in the face of actually what is best for the players. Unfortunately, you look at it, you weigh it up. You know, is your club going to survive if they do things by the book from a developmental point of view, which you hope you would be able to. And in many cases you can, but there are some cases you have to make some decisions with respect to players that are not really necessarily developmentally sound, and that's a shame. In other words, playing players on teams that, you know, that are not suitable to their abilities.
They should be playing up.
They shouldn't be playing up. I mean, you know, playing up or playing. Our job as coaches is to try and find a norm. It's not easy, right? In a team sport. But as much as we possibly can, our responsibility is try and find the right balance for a player. And if you're playing a player down, he or she is not going to develop at the rate that they really should because they're playing at an inferior level. Equally, a player playing up, especially at the younger age groups, you know, 13, 14, are really out of their depth. They quit. They quit because they're not enjoying themselves. They usually say they're quitting because they don't like the coach, but it's the same thing. They're just not enjoying themselves.
Yeah, the statistics in this country on the loss of kids in sport, any old sport.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
it's not just soccer. Somewhere between 70 and 80% of kids who are playing sport drop out basically when they hit puberty, like 13, 14, in that range. It is a staggeringly scary number, regardless of which sport you love. And what it means, it's not just about sport. Okay, I really like sport. But when you think about, okay, we're grandparents now, and someday we might have to call 911, and try not to think about that. But we're losing the labor pool of young people who are physically fit enough to serve as EMTs, as firefighters, as police officers, as folks serving in our military. There are professions in our communities that require people who are physically fit, right? And when I dial 911, I want the smartest, most fit fire person to show up and save me. And we're losing, that labor pool is shrinking because we don't have kids in athletics and being as fit as they could be. It's actually harming our communities in a much bigger way than, am I going to play soccer when I'm 15? And there's soapbox. That's Sam's soapbox. I got that out of a coaching course, scared the living daylights out of me. What else do you want to know? What are your biggest challenges with parents?
Well, I feel like as a player and a coach, just that misinformation of like just the basic rules and you know, like offsides is a big one you hear in our youth, and it's always one of those conversations you have to explain over and over again. It's how do you find overcoming that challenge? Are you presenting that information like, hey, here's a course you can take if you're a parent to learn the rules, you know, to get them up to date? How does that play into it?
Yeah, you've picked a really good rule there, haven't you?
Yeah, right.
And they've made it even worse. You know that, don't you? The way it is now. You know, the way offside used to be is if you were in an offside position and the ball was played and you were in their half of the field, right? You're off. Now, you can you know, it's all a matter of whether you're touching the ball or in the vicinity of the ball. You can even be offside in your own half now. In other words, when the ball's, if you're in the opposing half of the field in an offside position and you receive the ball in your own half, after the ball's been played, you're offside. Hasn't it? And that, so they've made it different. So that's not really answering the question. The thing is to, I think the only thing is to be patient. The rules, generally speak, you've picked the hard one, but most of the rules are pretty simple. There's only 17 of them, and they're pretty simple. And a lot of those are to do with uniforms. So it's not that difficult. So to spend some time, as a coach, to spend some time with a parent who doesn't really know, then you may have to spend a little bit of time just to let them see. And the best way is in video. If you've got some video of it where you can actually see it and slow it down and all that sort of thing, that would be the best way to do it. If people say, well, you know, it's a complicated rule, why have it? But the game, it wouldn't be the same game if you didn't have an offside rule. The game is as exciting as it is because of the rule, not, you know, it would be a different game if it weren't in there.
Bobby still gives me video homework. Do you have that issue in your sport?
Absolutely. You know, with football, American football,
Yeah.
I mean, the rules are a little bit more convoluted. Even more than actually high school football, I think there's more than 10 rules.
Really,
But
yeah.
each rule has a subset of
Subparts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge with football is differentiating between what is a foul on Saturday versus what is a foul on Sunday versus what is a foul on Friday. So
Oh, like high
basically
school,
from
college,
high school,
and
college,
football,
football,
pros.
there's a different set of
Yeah.
rules.
Or
In
even
general-
between the U.S. and Canada.
Correct, and then even at the youth level, because a lot of leagues do modify, right? And, you know, there's some leeway with youth athletes across all sports when it comes to enforcement of the rules.
Yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
kids are learning, and so you try to coach them through that as best you can. But conveying that to the parents is tough, because what they see on Sunday in the NFL is not necessarily the same rule at the youth level for a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And I actually have an experience with officiating. I've been football, high school, college, and youth for 12 years. So you hear everything from the stands, you know, and it just makes you laugh.
What, from the experts?
Right, they know everything. So to your point, though, I think it's you know, beneficial to maybe, you know, spend some time with the parents, especially at the youth level, and say, yes, this is a foul on Sunday in the NFL, but when we play, this is the rule, right? You kind of again setting those expectations, you know, just trying to get ahead of it as much as you can, you know. And a lot of times coaches are the same way. You know, they need to be, oftentimes it's the coaches that need the most coaching, you know, when it comes to these things. Because,
No question.
you know,
As
they're
I
not-
said earlier, you know, but as a coach, you're on the sideline and, you know, maybe something that's making you froth at the mouth, it sort of affects your thinking. I mean, a coach is not impartial, right? So, you know, I mean, there's there's a situation going on in the penalty area. This guy's going, it's a penalty. This one's going, no way. You know, and it's the same incident, right?
Yeah.
It's all to do with the emotion and the way
And the coach sets the course for the team. Because my experience, especially at the youth level, is when the coach starts getting overly excited, emotional, the players, and then the parents oftentimes will even compound and make it worse.
Absolutely.
Because now they're yelling and screaming, and now the kids are just, you know, they're just following what the adults are doing.
100%
So,
agree with you
know,
on that.
It's always about,
Yeah.
coach, you set the tone, you know, it's your responsibility.
It is the coach's responsibility. He's really, in a game sense, he's basically the leader.
Right.
He or she is the leader of that team group. I mean, in soccer now, I don't know whether you know this, but in soccer, a coach can be red carded through the indiscretions of a parent
Right.
in a game.
So we've seen that instituted as well with football at the youth level is, you know, the officials can basically, unsportsmanlike conduct, penalize the team for the actions of the crowd,
spectator.
the spectator. So we oftentimes will use that, you know, and then it puts it back on the coaches. Hey, control your parents. You guys are getting out of control.
Yeah.
And then the coach will turn around and tell everybody to be quiet or what have you. But
Still a little bit unfair though, isn't it?
Sure, we're
Because you-
penalizing the kids for actions, again, of adults.
Yeah.
And we know with youth sports are great until the parents get involved, right? Until the adults come in and screw everything
That's
up.
why coaches want to
Right.
coach orphans with trust funds.
And you started at the top, kids play to have fun, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I always use it, when I do my presentation, we talk about, parents, why do kids play? Or think about the first time you ever played football or whatever sport it was. There was no coaches, there was no officials, there was no whistles, there was no field. It was just you and your buddies in the backyard
That's
throwing
right.
the ball around. And that's the sport. That's sport.
Right.
So now we bring in all these, boundaries and structure, and it erodes the
Yep.
fun.
Yeah.
And then that's why kids quit. So,
Right.
we've got to work on keeping it fun, and then, having parents play an active role in that as well. At the start of the season, we encourage parents meetings, for all of our organizations.
Yeah.
You have to do it. You have to do it. It's not a one-time transaction where you sign your kid up and he's off and running. No, the parents need to be actively
Yeah.
participants to make it work.
Other thoughts, questions?
All right.
We did it again. Out a little bit early. Make the transition a little easier.
Thank you.
Dave, you
Thanks-
got any
thanks
last
for being
words?
No, we didn't even touch about, it's interesting because we didn't even touch about engagement with women's in sports and the impact that has in the game too. Other components to think about, or lack of, and then also the driving force of the ever, growing college scholarship and how that has made an impact. in
We
the process.
turn parents into agents.
Or just my child's amazing, so I have to get to this club or this level, or thing has to evolve all for the ever, the growing of college athletics.
It's a false narrative.
Exactly.
It is. The
really is.
statistics on how many kids actually get scholarships is a very, very small number.
But everyone thinks their kid is the best, and they're
Yeah.
gonna get there. To a degree. So.
Oh my God.
Even it goes down to like tryouts. Every year clubs have tryouts. I'm sure you're all aware of that. But I don't like tryout time because it's like the height of free agency, and where the kids are free agents and the parents are their agents, and when that period of time is over, it's great. Now we can get on with playing the game again.
Oh, thank you for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
We do have handouts, which is sort of